Hello, and welcome to the Cancer Journey podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sherry Ann.
So, today we're doing our last episode of the Heart Emotion series, which is resentment. So, before we start talking about that fun subject, let's get grounded with Pesh. I'll start today. So, physically, I'm a 4.2, emotionally a 4.4, spirits of 4.2, and hope is a 4.25, and my word is understanding.
Mm. Okay. Physically, I am 4.25. Emotionally, 4.4. Spirit, 4.6. Hope, 4.55. And my word is trust.
Okay, so resentment. The heart emotion series has been a really interesting one, first of all, to go through because day to day as humans, we do not really want to acknowledge our hard emotions or be with them. And they naturally make us so uncomfortable. But it's actually so nice to have this space to just talk about them, largely in general, but also how it lands individually. So, specifically on resentment for myself, where what comes up the most is that there is this like deep love and care for another person in this interaction, but there are like all these little things that build amongst this relationship that lead to resentment, and then it can become a choice, but sometimes it becomes an overwhelming feeling that can eclipse some of that love and care that were innate in the relationship.
Yeah. So can you take me further down that road of what does resentment feel like for you?
Like,
I'm just realizing that I'm having a difficult time tapping into resentment. So I need you to help spur that for me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that resentment builds when what comes to mind is that it's almost like trust is violated. And
Mhm.
not necessarily like it doesn't have to be like, you know, someone cheating on someone. That's a big line crossing of someone's trust. But even maybe not feeling heard and having even consistent, and I do think it is kind of more of a consistent thing. It's like one small thing happens, maybe let's say something as small as like it's your significant other, you're living with them and they leave their dishes on the sink, right? And at first it's like, okay, not a big deal. I'll just throw them in the dishwasher. I'll do it. But then again, it happens again and again. And then there's unspoken expectation of like, oh, they'll take care of it for me. They don't mind doing that. And it slowly builds to this resentment that at a certain point we're not even realizing it, especially because it seems so small, right? And you're like, no, it's not that. That's not what matters. It doesn't matter enough to bring up. It doesn't need to be a conversation, especially a hard conversation about that. And sometimes maybe it's also because the resentment builds because you don't feel like you can ask for what you need or want, or you just don't ask for what you need and want. That's not a practice that everyone has. And so at a certain point, it builds up, and then maybe it starts to feed itself that energy into an argument you're having about something bigger, and it kind of fuels it, or it starts to make you see them in a different light. Maybe now someone who did something for you all the time, there's more of this shadow of like, oh, but they're lazy and I have to do things for them, they can't even take care of themselves. And so this narrative kind of builds in your brain. And so I think resentment is such a hard one because we don't often give it space to be recognized, and so it kind of hides in the shadows, which I think is why it's kind of hard to find.
Right, right. Okay, so what I got while you were saying that is it's like this knot in my stomach, but it starts off very light. It's like a ping, and then it kind of festers
Hmm.
because I'm not saying anything. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll ignore that this time. Another layer on. Oh, okay, I'll and you just keep swallowing the mm, the feeling. So the feeling is, do I not matter? Do
Hmm.
you not get me? Am I not heard? So it's kind of it's in that realm of anger but and or maybe more constricting like in rage, um but it's not that. It's more like this little thing that just keeps building inside, and until it's like, "Urgh, no, I don't want to do anything for you because you did this to me." And it's not the one thing, or it's the one thing over and over again, but that's the same as feeling invisible.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of that pit here that's like, something's not quite right. I'm here, a little pit in my belly. Something's not quite right, but I don't know what it is. And it comes out in this emotion called resentment. It's like, "Urgh, I I don't care anymore," because I'm like protecting myself. There's a shield that comes up because it's like, wow, I really don't feel, I guess, that like I matter
Mhm.
is more than invisible. And so it's like, huh, well then if I don't matter, see here, now the mind starts kicking in, and it's like, well, if then I don't matter, then I don't care, and then so I'm not going to do the dishes either, and so there. Because you don't matter. It's that it has that element of anger, but it really is kind of this build. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah. And I would say like the only part that I feel like maybe isn't always true is that like grr part of it. Like it's not always so like known and recognized and like fierce as that. I think bitter is kind of how we tend to feel when it comes up. And it also like especially like early signs of it showing up we may not recognize because largely everything's good, you know? And so we're trying to keep it in that this like bubble of like everything's fine, everything's great, I'm really happy with this person regardless of what your relationship is, romantic or otherwise. But like there's it's like little tensions, and it does do that thing where it's almost like, well, if this doesn't matter then what does matter, and then you get really in your head about it. And I think that it can be the reason that some relationships falter, or like they're not as strong as they once were, because we minimize those moments so much for ourselves. And this is not even like, expressing that frustration with whoever the other person is, and the other person saying like, oh, no, that's not a big deal, you shouldn't worry about that. Like that's understandable resentment actually, because they just minimize something that you had the courage to bring up. And I think that this is a big part of the cancer journey, because when someone is on a cancer journey, especially as a patient, um, they almost have they don't have to accept the people around them, but there are people carrying around them, right? There are people who are there to show up for them. And so sometimes there's the assumption that they have to be in this like, I'm grateful, I'm grateful, I'm grateful for everything, I'm grateful for everything anyone would give me. But when someone's giving you something that you don't want or need, and you're being expected to be grateful for it too, it's like, okay, but that's not what I
Mm.
needed in this moment. So it's also this bit of like not being seen fully. And when you're on a cancer journey, like the knowledge of what you need and putting yourself first really does become much more acute. You're much more aware. Maybe before or without cancer you've been like, okay, I'll let that slide, it's not a big deal. But like now you're like, look, I got this one life to live, and that's not how I want to be treated. So then, how do I have the words to then stand up for myself and have this one small thing that really doesn't have to be an issue not be a big issue?
And I think that's it. It's that we tend to like let it go because it's not a big issue. So we don't communicate it, but it really does feel like that build. And it doesn't have to be the same thing, but it creates this feeling of mattering. And so it's like, well, what I care about doesn't matter. So, okay, on one side I can be like, okay, I understand that's not important to you and that's important to me. So maybe I don't bring it up. But what comes up for me is the communications. And it's not like I want to bring up every issue, but it's me getting in touch with, does this matter enough that it's causing a emotion, a pinch,
Mm-hmm.
even just a little pinch. And we're like, oh, it's just, we're wearing clothes and sometimes our clothes pinches us. And you'll go, okay, that was just a pinch. And so you fix it so it doesn't keep pinching you. But in a relationship, in a conversation, we're not going to go, oh, that was a pinch. Oh, that was a pinch. Because then it feels like, oh, are you just harping on everything now? It's like, no, it's just this doesn't, something's not right here for me. And I need to articulate it. I want to articulate it so I can just, like the clothes, I can just pull it. And so it's readjusted. But when's too much is when is it too much, like too much communicating the pinch, or when is it not enough? I mean, it's like, I don't know. So maybe I should just be quiet.
Right. And then like we silence ourselves before we even give ourselves a voice. And that like I also think resentment can be a byproduct of gaslighting. Um
Mm,
from someone else gaslighting you, but also in a situation like this, you kind of gaslight yourself to say that it doesn't matter when obviously something came up. So obviously it does matter. Like an emotion came up. Maybe it wasn't necessarily resentment in the moment. Maybe it was some sort of pinch, something that was constricting and painful and hurt you. But it feels like not enough to give uh, notice to or attention to. And if even if it doesn't matter to the other person, right? Because we can handle this here for ourselves before it gets to resentment. And it doesn't have to be necessarily about the other person. It's not necessarily their fault if we're not the ones communicating what we need. So if I'm first of all, I don't want to gaslight myself and tell me that anything that's happening here doesn't matter. Um, because if I do, then it does lead to resentment. So, like, what do I need? I mean, I need space, and I think I need someone to guide me to understand that that is something that still matters. Because I don't think it's easy to get there alone. This one's really tricky. And so, resentment was one that I wanted to bring up because I know that it comes up for so many people, and it comes up for people in relationships that they feel so strongly about that they're like, it's not worth jeopardizing the relationship for this. Now, should that relationship be in jeopardy if you can't bring up the little dish on the side? That's a whole different question. But I understand the wanting to like keep harmony, keep peace, not keep poking and saying it's every little thing. So where do you find that place to put frustrations, big or small, in a way that is productive?
yes. I was relating this to being on a cancer journey. And let's say the doctor has his or her way. And so it 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 could be, they speak in a certain way, and maybe it feels a little dismissive, or they're not as open as you want them to be. And so you're like, well, I want to keep a really cool a- uh open and amenable relationship with my doctor, my oncologist. I don't want to stir the pot. So then I keep swallowing it, and I swallow it, and the way that they're being just rubs me the wrong way. But I don't know that that's resentment, because it builds into resentment. And now I'm doing that when I have to go to meet with the doctor, because I'm afraid of this that I'm going to feel. And so the only place that I can really process it with is in a safe container, and with somebody who's neutral, non-judgmental, doesn't have an agenda for me. And that is very much the cancer journey coach environment, that space where I can go, I'm not quite sure what this is, but I'm really rubbed the wrong way by the way my doctor is being, and enough that now I think I want to find another doctor. And that's how resentment builds, right? It's like, I'm in this relationship. I want it to go well. I find it very useful. There's a reason why I'm in this relationship. But I get to a point where it's like, oh, I want to leave it. And everything else that comes with it, all the other good stuff, you're willing to throw out the window because you've reached this level of resentment. So having that space with your cancer journey coach would be ideal to help understand what's going on inside this head and these emotions of us, so that you can either articulate it, or you can find your own solution to not just swallow it.
Yeah. and to get clarity, because that's a whole muck of stuff in there when you're like experiencing some sort of backlash, we'll say, from the interaction every time, right? And you're just holding it in as if nothing bothered you. Um, what comes to mind too is that that doctor has no idea what they're doing. I mean, impacting you in that way, you know? So it's like you're receiving it, and the way that you've received it and the impact it's having on you is like painful and tight. And so there needs to be somewhere to let that go, but also feel heard in this space. I was recently talking to a friend about, there are interactions that sometimes can breed resentment. And there's this like idea of, I've worked in so many places where they're like, don't gossip, don't talk with your coworkers about what you're frustrated about. And to me, it's like, why not? If we're all experiencing something very similar, it should be something we get to talk about. But also, if I'm feeling some type of way about the way, let's say, a manager has spoken to me, I'm not going to immediately like respond with, well, that was rude, right? Because it comes off that way. I need to vent. I need to get the steam off the top. I need to say all the crazy, angry stuff going on that immediately clinched me in, so that way I can better articulate to this person who I'm trying to maintain a stable relationship with that, hey, I so understand that was not your intention. It did not land that way with me. It was a little hurtful. And I just want you to know that the way that you delivered that was not productive for me. And in the future, I would like X, Y, and Z, right? Ideally, we'd be able to say something like that. And ideally, they'd be able to respond in a way that wasn't combative. And we're not building a culture that teaches us to do that. So it's like we can ask and we can take our time and we can have as many touches as we need without the expectation that they're going to process and come back with an answer. Like you can give them a ton, be like, and I know this is probably new to you. You didn't know that that was happening at that time. Why don't you go process and we can talk about this next visit? But I would love for you to consider that in our interactions in the best way. But when we're just handling the resentment that we're building, instead of putting our hands up and being like, I'm done, I'm leaving, I'm over it, we've hit that point, that other person isn't privy to anything going on
Mhm.
there. So if we're trying to really communicate and hold up the relationships that do matter to us, it is very important to communicate that in a way that is gentle and understanding of ourselves and of the other person.
Absolutely. I mean, you were talking about gaslighting ourselves. We do have that inner voice. And I do think that our negative ego speaks to us in gaslighting language. And beyond that, though, we are such a culture of giving our power away. We give our power away to that person across the table. That whether it's any kind of relationship, it's not um, isn't it, as much as we want it to be 50-50, like I have my space and you have your space and we talk and we work things out, it's so often like you make the decision, you tell me what to, and especially in a medical doctor patient relationship, or even caregiver and doctor relationship, it's like, you please tell me, versus I want to be in a equal relationship where I get to freely say what I need to say for me and for the situation, and not feel like, uh-oh, I'm going to have backlash. Uh-oh, it's going to have a negative impact. Because that's what I'm always looking out for, right? I don't want to create a problem. So now I'm holding it all in, giving you the power, and now it's building. It's building. Instead of, I could keep the relationship, have it be better, possibly, if I'm willing to own my power and say, can we pause here? I really, I need to say something. And I get that, you're only here for 15 minutes if that's an appointment with my doctor. But you have to remember, not you have to. It's important, I think, for us to remember we're important.
Yeah. You bring up a really interesting point about power and power dynamics, because a lot of times when we are the one who's becoming resentful, another natural tactic that I feel our body sometimes goes into is using that resentment as power, or seeing it
Mm.
like, okay, well, if they have the power when we're, live together doing that, my power is holding this resentment and having something to hold against them and feeling like I have the upper hand because it makes me feel better to know that I am better, or that I am able to, like, maybe this feels a little bit like icky, I don't know, but it's like, okay, if they don't know how to communicate with me, I'm taking that and I'm being extra communicative, well, because they're so bad at it, you know what I mean? Like, there's that, like, almost one upping power that we can feel from being resentful because we're taking, like, we know that there isn't a level playing field, or that, like, we're no longer taking the things that they're saying and the power that they think they have in that situation, like, we're not taking it on and it's not ours, and so it makes us feel more powerful and like we're better than, because we're aware of that impact, but we're also not sharing it with them. And I think that once sometimes that is communicated and shared to them, that, like, hey, you did have this negative impact on me, that feels like giving your power away to some people. Now, I know this concept is very elusive. So, like, it's like a little hard to articulate for me personally, and it's definitely something I'm figuring out as I'm speaking right now and externally processing it. But sometimes that build of resentment feels like power in a relationship, and like we have, um, like, we're the ones who have the choice. And so because we're the ones who have the choice to, like, blow it up or maintain it, we think that that's like the most powerful place to be, but it's also not an even playing field.
I have to say this. What you're speaking to is passive aggressiveness. And I just saw an Instagram video where because we don't have permission, or we don't give ourselves permission to have the verbal communication, the voice. There's this woman and her husband's washing dishes, and there's pots on the floor, and she walks by and she kicks them, and then she keeps walking, and then he just kind of looks at her and keeps doing what he's doing, and then she comes by and then she pushes something else and makes noise. And I'm like, okay. And then she does it one more time because she's trying to be to heard, but she's just doing it by making noise. And he finally takes her and he throws her down and she starts laughing because she knows exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we know that we're being passively aggressive because that is a form of power that comes sometimes with resentment because we don't give ourselves that permission to say, you know, you just pinched me. Can we have, I don't want to make a big thing about it, but can we just talk about this for a second?
Wow, I love that. I love that connection. And also it clarifies that there are so many different ways to respond to resentment. There is obviously aggression, which not going to recommend. Passive aggression, I'm also not going to recommend. But there's also just like communicating and processing. I guess you could say another one is just like eating it and letting it eat you alive, but I don't think that's a very good one either. But, like, I mean, I don't even have a word, a little phrase, truncated whatever, of how to properly communicate this, because we're so keyed into you can actively be aggressive or passive aggressive. Like, they have terms. What is the term for just communicating and processing your feelings? We don't have one because we were not bred to like do that. So we should create one. I have no idea what it would be right now, more than communicate what you need and, like, process all that stuff and figure it out. But I really love that kind of tumble of, like, all the growing things that could show up as passive aggression. And what a great way, because I think passive aggression is such a better indicator of when there is resentment in the room. Wow, I love that. That's actually, I think, my takeaway, because that was
Okay.
aha for me right there. Um, because all we really have is, like, the actions that ourselves or other people are really enacting on each other to know how what's actually here. because you really know your own emotions, right? Like people might notice an energy or a vibe or see it on your face or take it from your words, whatever, but no one really, really knows to the extent of exactly what you're feeling in that moment, um, except for you. So I love that, how it's being displayed and how it's showing up. Um, Resentment's a hard one, but also that's why I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, because I think that it matters so much, because what we crave as humans is connection and relationships and friendships and depth. Okay, not all of us want depth, but I want depth. And to do that, there's this recognition that some resentment might build. But also, I personally have also seen how beautiful relationships can be and how much deeper they can become when you express those resentments. Maybe we don't call them resentments when we're talking to people because that's very triggering, but to say, like, there's this thing that's happening that I don't really like, I would like to change it if possible, can open doors when someone says, yes, thank you for letting me know, I'm able to do that. And you see your relationships change. You feel more comfortable speaking your mind. You feel like you can be more receptive to what's happening with them as well. So I mean, I think acknowledging that any hard emotion is here only broadens what can come out of it. And I don't think it ever really destroys something that really matters.
Right. Because if the relationship cannot stand up to you having your voice,
Was it one worth having?
then it really is not a relationship for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that sounded like your takeaway. What's your pesh?
Yes, physically, I am a 4.2, emotionally, a 4.5, spiritually, a 4.4, and hope is a 4.25. My word is curiosity.
Mm, love that word. Okay, my takeaway. I mean, I didn't at the beginning. I was having trouble getting into um, resentment, and the passive aggressive just popped into my head. So yeah, it resonates really strongly with me. And just noticing when I do that, because sometimes it's automatic. It's like I'm upset, but I don't want to. I want to hold on to my power. So yeah, but I don't want myself to be passive aggressive. And so with saying that, I think the takeaway is to really notice. I like the pinch because it's not a big thing. It's a pinch. And I love the realization that I can just pause for a moment and say, ouch, that hurt me. And even just saying that might be enough. That the other person's aware that their impact was, oh, and maybe apology, sorry, oh, didn't intend that. What are you talking about? Anything. Then now I have the opening of a conversation. So my PESH physically is 4.5, emotionally 4.5, spirit 4.55, and hope is 4.7. And my word is wow. I didn't know where that was going to go. And I'm really pleased with just the clarity from the conversation.
Sometimes it's actually more worthwhile to talk about something that we're completely unprepared for and that we don't necessarily feel deeply connected to, because having the conversation even here helps build clarity and understanding. And like, for me, it's just the clarity in my body, even like, where is that for me, where is it showing up in my life? And then I can make better choices. So thank you so much for joining us for this hard emotion series, and we'll be back next week with a new episode.
Remember that you're more powerful than you realize and enjoy the rest of your day.